In this video, I'd like to briefly look at a work by Umbrello et al., right? So Umbrello and a bunch of co-authors. I'll just go by the name Umbrello et al. The article is "The Future of War. Could Lethal Autonomous Weapons Make Conflict More Ethical?" They say yeah. Sorry to give the secret away. Or the punchline. Anyways, lethal autonomous weapons, LAW, so laws are LAWs. Yeah, they say it could help a lot. Of course, once LAWs are sophisticated enough, they could help a lot, make conflict a lot more ethical. Also, here's the old inevitability argument or presupposition. We've seen that was made and challenged by some our previous authors. Check out my other videos on that. That they're inevitable. Look, it's coming, right? You can talk all you want about it. You can say that we shouldn't, etc., etc. But nobody who can make these things is not going to use them. So once it is the standard kind of, if it's going to happen, can we at least regulate it type arguments? Those are made all the time. And it's not an unusual way to argue when you actually think something is inevitable. And what they want to do is resist the blanket ban of LAWs. So they do say no blanket bans, but we want to ban some kinds of these things and allow others. That's the key of this, is that could they, not all of them, but could some lethal autonomous weapons make conflict more ethical? Yes. So we shouldn't ban them, and we shouldn't have just anything goes. We need a regulation. So what does it mean to regulate? Well, you put parameters on things. You know, under certain conditions, you can have LAW. So that's your key right there. So that's our idea in the background. Now, in order to get this paper off the ground, not surprising, they're going to start by reviewing the literature and the scholarship. They're going to review it, and they find it wanting. That is the scholarship that advocates blanket bans. So they say, look, you know, we've looked over it, and they do a pretty breezy, cursory approach to it, and they don't think that this scholarship that advocates blanket bans is really basically doing the job of supporting a blanket ban. So what they want to do is saying, well, what are we going to allow? Well, we're going to put restrictions, and namely, we're going to have ethically programmed LAWs. Now, this, of course, raises an immediate problem, namely, well, two things, right? And they do talk about this a little bit. First off, if you're going to have an ethical program, you've got to worry about a couple of things. And that the first one is, well, which ethical system? Because, as we all know, there's a variety of ethical approaches. Virtue ethics is a family of approaches, deontological approaches, family of approaches, and consequentialism, another family, and arguably very large. So you've got various angles that you can take, and even if you select one particular angle, like, oh yeah, we're going to do the deontological line, you're still making choices. So, and there's no agreed upon ethical theory in the sense that all philosophers and academics would agree, yes, this is the theory to try and program. We haven't even talked about how difficult it would be to program. We're talking about making the choice in a non-arbitrary manner of which ethical system to use. So they say, well, look, you know, there's no agreement there, so we're going to try and get around that problem, and by finding something else to program that's a little simpler. So what is it going to look like? What do they come up with? Well, they say that an ethically programmed LAW is going to have two things. It's basically going to be programmed with the rules of engagement, which are, you know, a standard set of rules under which conflict can take place. And then the LOW, which is laws of war. It's basically the Geneva and Hague Conventions. So it is kind of a low-level type of formatting of LAWs that would be, in a sense, good enough. Not perfect, of course, but in that sense, they think that this would more or less do the job. And so it would make, if you kept this simpler approach, that is, just having this level, you bypass that whole problem which ethical system, because you've already got an internationally accepted approach with rules of engagement and the laws of war. So it would make the international regulation of LAWs easier, so you don't have to go and try and fight your way to get some ethical system agreed upon. And it would also, they say, and this is debatable, but they do make the claim that it would get rid of the problem of programming values into a system, right? Because the first problem is which values, which ethical system are you going to, which ethical theory or framework are you going to program into the system? And then the second problem is how are you going to embed the values and the ideas of that ethical theory in that system in question? And they think that they've got around this. So they're trying to avoid the problems, the weakness of the arguments for blanket bans. They're trying to ban some kinds and allow others. And how do they do that? They would have a fairly straightforward model of programming, namely at this level, because you've already got agreement. So why don't we go with what we've got and that we've agreed on? And that would be a lot easier to enforce. And in the end, it would avoid a lot of the problems that we have with humans involved in conflict, for the simple reason that it would be machines doing this, and it wouldn't be basically us. So it wouldn't be objects of moral standing that are in the fight anymore. We would be taken out of this process, and so the possibility for ethical issues to arise becomes substantially reduced. So yes, could they do it under certain conditions? Could lethal autonomous weapons could indeed make warfare, conflict, more ethical?